What is going on, everyone? My name is J-Rad, and this is another episode of which one's going to be the winner. So I did this back with the iPhone 10 and the Google Pixel XL to really claim which one is the true winner. And I'm going to actually decide there's going to be a rating system, categories, and there will be a winner. Clear cut, not if and or but. So, as you can see, we have the Galaxy S9 Plus here. This is the unlocked coral blue version. And then we have the iPhone 10 Silver. So, obviously, iPhone 10 came out back in October, and the S9 just came out in March. The S9 and S9 Plus. So, both of these are the kings in the respective area right now. Samsung S9 Plus, arguably one of the best Androids out right now, and obviously the iPhone 10 would be arguably the best iPhone in the lineup as of today. So our first category is design. How is the phone made? So looking at the S9 Plus, it is a refinement on the Galaxy S8. You have a glass sandwich design with what they say is stronger aluminum on the edges, and you have glass in the front and glass on the back. So they also did move the fingerprint sensor below the camera setup this time, which is a lot nicer. It's a much more natural placement, and you don't smudge your camera by unlocking your phone. You have your heart rate monitor and flash underneath the glass. On the bottom, you have your headphone jack, your USB Type-C, and a speaker, which is a dual firing speaker in conjunction with the top headset speaker. Up in the top, you also have your sensor array to do the iris scanning facial unlock. You do have your power button on the right side and your volume rocker and infamous Bixby button on the left. So really, this isn't much of a design change, as it is just slightly different, as I believe the phone got a little thinner and the bezels got a little smaller from the S8. Other than that, the phone is generally the same, and the design is a really good one. It worked last year, and it continues to work this year. I have no problems with it, other than the whole problem with being both glass. It is prone to cracking, just like the iPhone 10, just like the S8, and any other glass back and glass front phone, right? So there's that. Really, what the Samsung has going on that's different than Apple at this point is they're still using aluminum, which is generally softer than what they did on the stainless steel, but you also have more along the ports and things. But that's going to be more in our like quality of life sort of category. Just straight up design for design. We're doing the aesthetics. So iPhone 10, if you're unfamiliar, this is Apple's glass sandwich design, almost all screen on the front, minor bezels, and the notch at the top, which holds your Face ID sensors. The back, very similar. Glass panel allows for wireless charging. Nothing fancy going on here. Stainless steel rails with your a larger power button, SIM card tray, volume rocker, and mute switch. The bottom, you have dual speaker grills. Yet this is your speaker. This is the barometric damper, or whatever they call it. The lightning port, and your speaker, which is at the top. So everyone's very polarized about the iPhone 10 design, mostly because of the notch. So myself personally, I haven't found being bothered by it an awful lot, but a lot of people are. My biggest problem with the iPhone 10 design is actually how large the camera hump is on the back. And if you can see it, it sticks out quite well. So if you have it, say, on a flat surface, it wobbles, right? If you don't use a case and say you have other stuff in your pocket, the stainless steel ring or whatever metal they used is sharp, and it will actually scratch whatever else is in your pocket. It's happened. That's why I mention it. Other than that, I mean, I like the design. The notch doesn't bother me. The S9, now I like the S8 design when it came out, mostly because your edges have barely any bezel, and your bottom bezels actually got smaller from last year. However, there is bigger bezels than the iPhone. You know, it does come down to preference for me, and I wouldn't say the notch is my biggest problem. My biggest problem with the iPhone is actually the rocking now compared to this. I'm going to actually say, for me, personally, in this performance design, I'm actually going to give the award, the winning category, to Samsung just because they did such a good job refining last year's design, right? They moved everything to where it should be. Stuff is protected. I like it. On the back of the iPhone, your camera, which doesn't make a lot of sense, you have glass covering both lenses, which is great, but then you have a plastic True Tone little circle in the middle. I don't know why, but that will get scratched, and not that it affects your flash too awful much, but to me it's just an oversight, which I think they could have changed. Now, I will say that Apple's design for rails, for side rails, is better because the stainless steel is much stronger than aluminum. But both are glass sandwich, both are glass back, and honestly, I think the more attractive looking futuristic phone is Samsung. So going on to performance, so there is no denying that Apple's A11 Bionic is the king in Geekbench and many other benchmarks today. But on the other side of things, this is the US variant of the S9, so this has the Snapdragon 845, and the Plus model gets 6 gigabytes of RAM, 64 gigabytes of storage, which is expandable, versus this one, which is the 64 gig iPhone 10, or you had the option of 256, no expansion. You get what you get. But I'm going to talk about more day-to-day things. So, for example, we are going to, as how I always do, the quick and dirty speed test. This isn't going to be benchmarking. I'm not going to be running Antutu, Geekbench, whatever. We're just going to do what apps are you most likely going to use the most, and how fast do they open. And, well, I'm not going to be opening AirMail anyway, because the Samsung does not have it. So here we go. Okay, so going into your phone dialer in 3, 2, 1. About the same. Going into your text messages in 3, 2, 1. I was in a conversation, so that probably wasn't fair, so let me close that out again, because I had to load the conversation. We'll do that, and we'll just close the one app so they're on even playing grounds. So going back into your texts, 3, 2, 1. About the same. Going into your camera in 3, 2, 1. I would say about the same. We'll say your native Photos app in 3, 2, 1. About the same. So you kind of get the picture. So obviously a lot of iOS apps are more optimized for iOS than their Android counterparts, but going for native apps, I'd say that you're about the same. You're not gonna, if you're choosing one of these phones, you're not gonna lose by going either one. I would say, just going off of my history with Samsung phones, my history with Android, and my history with Apple, you're probably going to see the benefit of Apple's A11 and iOS longer than you will see Samsung's version of Android. So if you don't know, Android already has next year's Android in developer, so Pixels can get it, and the current version of Android is Android 8.1 Oreo. The S9, even though it released a month ago, already released with a version outdated, meaning this is version 8. So this is going to be a jab at Samsung and its update policy. They're just slow. They've always been slow. They're getting faster, but still slow. At least with Apple, you're going to get the most current, most up-to-date version of iOS as soon as it is put out. It doesn't matter your carrier, doesn't matter anything. I have an unlocked S9, which has historically proven that I am slower to get updates, which really stinks because usually it has to deal with carriers. But even when you're not dealing with carriers, I'm still getting slower updates. And to me, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So I'm going to give performance and long-term performance to the iPhone just because I know Apple will keep it up to date. I know that there usually isn't a slowdown besides the battery issue, which now they give you an option to enable or disable, where I know people will complain about Samsung lag. Of course, when the phone is a month old, you're not going to get that, but it probably will happen. So keep that into account. Know if you get the S9 Plus and the S9 or any Samsung phone, you're going to be a little bit behind in updates. I know they promised to update quicker with Project Trouble support and things of that nature, but I'll believe it when I see it. So we'll go from there. So if you're counting, it's 1 and 1. So next, going into camera. So I've used these both these phones extensively. I've had the S9 Plus since it came out, and the iPhone 10 since it came out, and both are really great cameras to have. Samsung's big claim to fame this year was this dual aperture setup in the back, which on that top camera, there's a little metal ring that will open and close to change the aperture size when you're dealing with low light. And it has the standard telephoto, not telephoto lens setup, similar to Apple's setup here. Basically, that mechanical aperture, what that's doing is it's allowing more or less light to come into the sensor based on your shooting conditions. So like at nighttime, it's going to open all the way up. The daytime is going to probably close a little bit, help you get more detail. So I've extensively taken pictures and I have extensively read reviews on camera comparisons. If you're going by DSO mark, then the S9 and S9 Plus will indeed be the higher rated phone. But if you're going in actual shooting that you're doing yourself, are people really going to notice the difference? And I'm going to say no, but here's why. iPhone 10 does a really good job just about all the time. I would say you get a much more color accurate picture, meaning if it's kind of a gray sky, you're going to get a gray sky. If your trees you're photographing are a little burnt, they're a little brown, you're going to see that. You're going to see snow that's white, and you're going to see skies that are blue, normal blue. Samsung has always had a very contrasty photo. Now, personally for me, I like that. When I always did photography, I liked having a more contrasty photo because I thought it looked more artistic. But if you're going true to life, your iPhone is going to take a very good picture. I would say the iPhone has less modes. They do have your portrait mode, and you do have your portrait lighting now, which is still in beta. But there is still instances where that portrait mode and studio lighting just doesn't work out. Doesn't find your edges well, and I think Apple is still finding their way into that category. Samsung took a page out of their Note 8's book with their 2-lens setup to have live focus, meaning you can take a photo of whatever and have live focus, drag a slider to adjust how much blur the background is getting, and you can also adjust that after the fact when your photo is already taken and be like, oh geez, I want more or less bokeh effect, which is nice. The dual aperture makes the camera a little more versatile. You do have a lot of shooting modes. You can download more shooting modes, things of that nature. And you do have your front-facing camera, but really I'm not even going to compare front-facing cameras because the selfie camera in both are adequate. They're fine. Selfie cameras are what they are, right? I would say both take very good shots. If I had to pick one, I'd probably say actually the iPhone's front-facing is better than the Samsung's. But talking about the rear cameras, versatility, ease of use, both of them are very easy. You both have pro modes. You both have a ton of different options. So let's see. Here you have automatic filters. Tons of different settings. Both can shoot in 4K, 60 frames a second. Both have HDR. This camera also has super slow-mo, meaning you can set up your camera pointed at something where there's going to be some action, and you will actually have 960 frames per second when your camera recognizes it's moving, a dropping ball, anything you want to choose, a dog jumping, whatever. Go over to super slow-mo, you put it in the box, and you start it. I guess I'm going to include this in the camera portion is going to be the AR emoji versus an emoji. So I'll say, for example, go here, go here. Both of them have their benefits or not. Let's see if I switch that around. You'll see me now. Let's see, AR emoji. There we go. So let's see if I can get it kind of behind the camera here. So it does an okay job at tracking your face. This is where the iPhone really does take off versus the Samsung. So I would say this was kind of we'll give you my person, which definitely doesn't quite look like me too much. But anyway, it does a good job. It's a neat little gimmick. To me, it reminds me of Bitmoji with the Samsung. Obviously, with the iPhone, you get a very good facial tracking, which has a lot to do with the true depth sensors in the top with facial mapping. So there's that. Anyway, back to camera. Got a little off track. Back to camera. I'm going to say the more versatile camera is going to be the Samsung. It was rated better in practice. It does take better low light photos. That is 100% because of the larger aperture it can be. So both of them in your pocket are going to be taking great photos. But if I had to pick one to have over the other, I would say more times than not, this one will probably take a more detailed, better photo. That is not saying that the iPhone X are bad at all, because I have taken some absolutely gorgeous photos with the iPhone X, but comparing the two, you're going to see a little bit more detail here. You're going to see a little bit better, probably light balancing here because of the adjustable aperture. It's not, the end-all, be-all like Samsung is making it out to be, like, oh, this is revolutionary. It's great. I think it's great that they're adding mechanical apertures into their cameras, and I hope it gets better. But I would say it's marginally better. Both are great, marginally better. So 2 Samsung, 1 Apple. Now the big one. We're going to ecosystem. So Samsung and Apple are both trying to make this ecosystem of things, whether it be smartwatches. Samsung obviously has appliances and the Internet of Things devices. Apple obviously has the Apple ecosystem. So we'll get the easy one out of the way. Apple's ecosystem is great. If you have a MacBook, an iPad, iMac, whatever, everything works together with your Apple Watch. I can unlock my MacBook with my Apple Watch, which is connected to my phone. iMessage syncs across multiple platforms. Everything works great. The only barrier to entry is you got to be invested in the Apple ecosystem, meaning the MacBook, the Apple Watch, the iPads, everything, in order to really gain a benefit. If you just had an iPhone, you're not going to receive any Apple ecosystem benefit other than maybe your Beats headphones connecting with the W1 chip or your Apple AirPods being instantaneously connected. So there's that. Going back to Samsung with its ecosystem, they're building it, right? So you have Samsung appliances, Samsung smart things, you have other Samsung devices like the Gear 3 Frontier smartwatches, the VR headsets, and various other things. The ecosystem certainly isn't there. The continuity between their devices isn't there. Their smartwatches don't run Android. Their VR headset, actually, I'd say is really good. But again, you're shoehorned into just using Samsung phones for that. If you spent a buttload of money on smart appliances, yes, everything would connect. As you can see from my drop down, I do have smart things, which mean I can turn my light on and off. My TV is a Samsung TV. You guys can't see that. There you go. You can zoom that in a little better. So if I drag it down, yes, I can go on to my internet connection, my smart things. I can turn my outlet on and off. All of that fun stuff from here. But again, you got to be invested in it. Now, I would say the barrier to entry to get like Internet of Things devices is a lot cheaper because you can use a lot more options than things that are HomeKit certified, which I know there's a lot, and everything keeps changing for that. But Samsung's definitely ecosystem is not as strong as Apple's. 100% not. So in the end of the day, if I had an ecosystem I'd rather be involved in, I'd certainly rather be in the Apple ecosystem, just because if you have a MacBook and all of those things, you get a great amount of benefits compared to if you just had an iPhone. And if you're in the Samsung ecosystem that's kind of growing, it's not like that's going to be an answer to all your problems. So 2-2, tied. And we get to the last category, which is quality of life. And what do I mean by that? So I mean every little thing that we haven't talked about before. So quality of life things we're going to talk about with the iPhone. So quality of life is actually going to briefly integrate with the ecosystem, because quality of life, if you have your MacBook open, you're receiving text messages. iMessage syncs across multiple platforms, meaning I can answer my texts on my MacBook. I can even answer quick replies on my Apple Watch. That's really nice. It was really nice for me when I was in school because I didn't have to look at my phone. I could just have my laptop out, and if it was an important conversation, still talk. You have AirDrop, which I don't think a lot of people use as much as I do. I use it all the time, meaning I can go to my photos or videos, select AirDrop to my MacBook, and it'll just transfer whatever file it is automatically into the downloads folder, and it'll be there. Versus having to upload it, download it, send it via email, plug in a cord. Makes it really, really nice. So Apple has Siri. Siri certainly isn't as advanced as Google Home or Google Assistant and Google Home, because I do have a HomePod, and answering questions back and forth, Google Home does win out more often than not. Other quality of life things is, you have huge accessory support for Apple's products. Pretty much anything that Apple makes, anything under the sun with the Apple logo on it, there's going to be a ton of accessories you can get. Both big manufacturers, small manufacturers, they're going to make it for the iPhone. So there's no lack of options for Apple Watch straps, iPhone cases, screen protectors, anything there is, you name it, pretty much anyone will have it. Your App Store is probably going to be a little bit better. The apps are definitely usually a little more polished and things of that nature. Outside of that, any other, there is obviously iOS specific apps, which are very nice. And there, you do get some Google only apps too, but I haven't really seen many Google only apps or Android only apps that are better than the iOS only apps. It's just, I don't know if people take more time on their iOS versions. The versions are just nicer. So that's a big quality of life thing. If you want the quickest app support, it's going to be the iPhone. You want the best integration with other products, that's going to be an iPhone. You want the best selection of third-party stuff, that's going to be your option right there. So to the Samsung, out of all the Android phones, Samsung is probably one of the biggest as far as accessory support, third-party support, things of that nature. You get now just about probably as many different accessories now that as the iPhone. If they're only going to do two manufacturers, they're going to do Apple and they're going to do Samsung. It just seems to be the way it's going. Quality of life things on the Samsung. Unfortunately, a bad quality of life thing is Bixby. So Bixby was introduced last year. They are supposed to be making it better, and I just don't use it a lot. With that said, you also have the choice of Google Assistant. Now, I'm not connected to the internet, but you have both. So I actually use Google Assistant a lot because it does integrate with my Google Homes, and it's just better than Siri. I have both of these in my pocket. If I'm going to ask a question, I'm going to do Google Home or Google Assistant because it's just better. It's more conversational, and it has the backing of Google to answer your questions. You do have some nice little features with Samsung. I actually like Samsung Pay better than Apple Pay for the only reason of you can use it at terminals that don't necessarily just have NFC. You can use it for terminals that have, I forgot what exactly they call it, but basically there's technology in the phone that mimics a magnetic strip. So say, for example, Target. I know Target does not have Apple Pay or now Google Pay support, but if I have my Samsung phone, I can use Samsung Pay. It's not 100% all the time, but I'd probably say more than half the time you go up, use your Samsung Pay, it works no problem, and that has helped me in a pinch before. Now, I didn't talk about display in my design category because really they are both fantastic displays, with the only benefit of this one gets really bright. They're both made by Samsung, actually. This one, again, is 3-4 months newer, so it's going to just be a little bit better, which it is. Really, obviously, this comes down to some of the people who may or may not like it. You still have a headphone jack. Now, I have enough Bluetooth headphones now that I could line the table with just over the years of accumulating, because I had wireless headphones for a long time, but wireless headphones die. And unless you decide that you're going to go to the gym and charge your headphones at the same time, if you're in a pinch, I always keep a pair of wired headphones in my bag. They can be little cheesy ones, they can be decent ones. It doesn't matter. You don't need a dongle or another thing to remember to plug them in. You have it. You can do the same there, but you got to make sure you have the dongle with you, and unfortunately the dongles are just pretty fragile. You do have expandable memory. I know other Android phones like the Pixel 2 do not have expandable memory, but this one does, up to 400 gigs, I do believe, of micro SD card storage. So any phone, any S9 Plus you get is 64 gigs of storage, just like this. But if this gets full, pop in an SD card, you're good to go. The other day, I was actually recording with the iPhone 10, and my storage was full, and that was it. I had to delete stuff to make more storage. It's, just the nature of the beast. iPhone's Face ID is certainly way better than Samsung's Face ID technology, but I will say one thing. It has intelligent scan, and what that does, if you just saw, is you register your face and your irises, and based on your lighting conditions, it'll choose which one's going to work the best, unlock your phone. And it was pretty fast. Okay, same thing for iPhone. You see the unlock, you swipe up, boom, there you go. Security-wise, the iPhone is definitely more secure with Face ID than Samsung's intelligent scan. But the real take-home point is the fingerprint sensor. So a lot of times you have your phone in your pocket, you're immediately taking it out. This fingerprint sensor is nice and fast, works almost every time, and I really feel bad that Apple didn't include it. I know they're trying to push new technology, and that's totally fine, but there is spots you could have put it. I mean, I know Sony, for example, puts their fingerprint sensors on their power buttons, which only would have made them maybe flatten out this little section and put a power button that doubles as a fingerprint sensor. Just an idea. Would have been nice for me, but it just required me to get used to something new. Not that it's bad, but it's just another step. You unlock it, gotta swipe up. I hope in the next update, iOS 12, they make it so that you can just, as soon as it recognizes your face, boom, you're in your home screen. Just like if I'm here, put my fingerprint on it, right there, there's my home screen. You have some other creature comforts on here like Apps Edge. Now this isn't something that I necessarily use all the time. I used it more with the Note, but you do have your clipboard, reminders, device maintenance, custom tasks, weather, quick tools for like compass and ruler. I don't use that a ton, but for people who do use it a ton, it can be very helpful. You have the plethora of features or gimmicks Samsung throws in. Smart Stay, which is where if you're looking at the phone, it'll stay on. You look away, it'll turn off. Things of that nature. Turns your screen off. And really, I'm going to say that's about it. Quality of life things. So how I'm going to decide this category is this. If I had to pick one phone that's going to be my only phone that's going to supposedly do whatever I need it to do, which one am I going to pick? So I've used the iPhone for a very long time, and in other tests like these, the iPhone has won compared to like the Pixel 2 XL, because the Pixel 2 XL is on a similar playing field with no headphone jack, no expandable memory, no facial scan features, security features like that, nothing. For this one, I'm going to have to pick Samsung for quality of life, and I'll tell you exactly why. It kind of comes back to what I was saying about the gym. I go to the gym a lot. If I go there, my wireless headphones are dead for my iPhone. I'm SOL unless I have the dongle and my wired headphones with me. More than likely, I always have a pair of cheap ones that are just sitting at the bottom of the bag, lost forever. And if I had the Samsung with me, plug it in, good to go. With the iPhone, I would have had to have foresight, which my first iPhone 10 was the 256 gig version. You have to have foresight in order to buy which version you want. So if you know you're going to need more storage for photos, videos, media, you got to buy that up front. You got to shell out that extra few $100s to get it. Samsung, yes, you only get 64 gig off the rip, but it's cheaper to buy an SD card than it is to buy a new phone, because for this, if I want to upgrade, I have to buy a new one, sell this one, and hopefully make a decent amount of money, and I'm probably going to not lose, but I'm probably going to be out $400 or $500, depending. I can buy an SD card, which I will use other places like my DSLR camera, wherever. It's not going to go to waste. So yeah, I'm going to give the victory to Samsung for quality of life, just because it's easier to do anything I need to do. I can use the Samsung Pay in more places. I have the availability if I want to use Apps Edge. I have the availability if I want to get in on any of their gimmicks, Bixby included, if that ever does get, in fact, better. So there you have it. The clear-cut winner for me is going to be Samsung. Now, with that mentioned, I am heavily invested in the Apple ecosystem. Now, I'm not heavily invested due to my excessive want, but what happened is I like to use Final Cut, so you need to have a Mac for that. Just so happens my Mac works with my iPhone, and my favorite wearable is the Apple Watch. So this victory is more on the independent categories win, right? So this does win for having more useful features at any given time. And I'll put this in there. However, for people heavily invested in the Apple's world, you're not going to pick this anyway. You're just not. It's not going to happen. You're going to pick the iPhone 10 because it works with your life and everything else. So yeah, you might not have a headphone jack. You might not have the storage. You'll just offload it to your Mac and move on. If Android finally puts out a decent wearable, I would probably use it with the Samsung because there's more freedom in Android as a whole. But then again, I don't know when that'll be. It doesn't seem like it's a very big push for Android and Google and Samsung to create a really proficient wearable to compete with Apple Watch. I love my Apple Watch. I wear it all the time. I use it for gym tracking. And the only one that I haven't tried, which I've even heard is even in the same realm as the Apple Watch, is the Gear S3, which I haven't had. And so I can't accurately say if that's better or worse. But I just know the Apple Watch is kind of the bar, right? That's where it's set. So anyway, category by category, I picked the winner. Let me know in the comments below if you disagree, if I missed anything, what your winner would be and why, and we'll talk about it down in the comments. So anyway, thank you guys for watching. My name is Jared, and this has been another episode of TechWorks and Who Would Win. See you in the next one.